Today I'm here with Father Michael Holleran, Catholic priest who spent more than 20 years in silent monastery. Welcome, Father.
I'm delighted to be here and able to speak with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
Good to have you. Today we're going to be talking about centering prayer, but before we go right into that, just tell me a little bit about your background. And I said that you were a priest, and I said that you had been on retreat or in the silent monastery for 20 years, but tell me just a little bit more about that.
Well, very briefly, I actually started out as a Jesuit after high school, but I spent 22 years in the Carthusian order.
See, I couldn't say that. That's why
right.
I didn't introduce you that way because I couldn't say it.
The Carthusians, there are lots of C's: Carthusians, Cistercians, Camaldolese, Capuchins. So the Carthusians are a silent contemplative order founded in the 11th century in France, and still in existence today, obviously. And I spent 12 years at the American House in Vermont, and 7 years at the Mother House in Grande Chartreuse in France, and 3 years in England. So I have plenty of practice in silence and silent prayer. Yeah.
You're not going to be silent for us today, are you?
Well, we'll spend a little time in silence, just about as much as you can normally take on the first try. Yeah, so we'll try that.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about centering prayer. So tell me a little bit about centering prayer.
All right, centering prayer as such, under that denomination, is fairly recent. It began really as a movement in the 1970s. Pope Paul VI, the Pope at that time, asked here's the C's again, the Cistercian order, the Trappists, in other words, Thomas Merton was a member of that order, to resurrect, bring back to public attention, to everyday awareness among ordinary Catholics, the contemplative style of prayer, which had really fallen very much into a state of disuse and even lack of awareness on the part of people. So we're talking about contemplative prayer as opposed to vocal prayer, saying words, or meditation, which is thinking about holy things. Contemplation means you're going beyond all words and all images and even beyond all superficial feelings to get to something deeper. So that's what you're centering on. You're going beyond the periphery of your thoughts and your feelings down into the depths, centering into the depths of your heart, where even the Catechism, the Roman Catholic Catechism, says God dwells. We're temples of the Holy Spirit. God dwells in us. So we're contacting God on that level and in that way.
Wow, that sounds really nice. So we're trying to bring
it
in and sort of forget about the external world. And it sounds a little bit like it's a little bit of a dual thing where we're trying to center on ourselves, but also center on where you said God.
Well, that's true. We're not centering on ourselves, in fact, and that's not the intention. That's just what they call Nombre Lism. We're just focusing on our navels. But as St. John of the Cross said, the great another C, the great Carmelite mystic in the 16th century, he said that God is the center of the soul. So our center, and people are freaked out sometimes when they hear this, our deepest center is God.
Oh, that's really nice.
So you go down deep enough, you cannot not find God, who is always there, and we believe, through Christ, through His Spirit, is accessible to us and made real for us. And so that's the practice.
Wow, that sounds really nice. I kind of want to talk a little bit about, so we're going to be practicing centering prayer in a minute, but when I think about prayer, I think about it in a very specific way. So I think either I'm thanking God for something. God, thank you for giving me good health. Thank you for my family. Thank you. Or I think I'm asking for something. Give me good health. Save my family. Do something for me. Or I think, I'm saying a prayer like the Our Father or something I've memorized.
Yes. And all that's fine. We even have a list of the different types of prayer. The two that you just mentioned, thanksgiving or petition, asking for something or being thankful for something. Or we would say you're sorry, or you're for what you've done, or you're adoring God, you're glorifying God.
Notice I didn't bring that one up.
I know, yes. The guilt trip. But the point is, all the way back in the tradition, in the Christian tradition, all the way back to Scripture, really, if you can easily find it in St. Paul. But all the way back in the tradition, before we split up, the Greek church, the Protestant churches, etc., there was a very strong understanding of prayer as contemplation. That is to say, going beyond all concepts, all images, any kind of symbolic representation of God into the depths of silence, into the darkness where God dwells, is one phrase that comes from the book of Exodus, when Moses went up to Mount Sinai, into the darkness where God dwells. But the fathers of the church, Gregory of Nyssa, and the Jewish tradition as well, spoke about that darkness as something that we're all called to enter into in the depths of our hearts. So that's the idea. Prayer is not simply speaking to God. Prayer, as some of the ancient writers said, is the descent of the mind into the heart, where you're going beyond words and images and concepts, down into the heart, into the dark depths where God dwells beyond all that. And of course, God being infinite, how could any image or symbol or word, human word, be adequate to the contact with God? That's why John of the Cross said the only immediate, the only proximate, direct contact with God is in pure faith, the silence of pure letting go into God. And that's what prayer is, kind of letting go into God, letting God into you, letting go into God. That's really what prayer can be at its deepest level. That's what we're centering on.
Let's try it. And let's try doing some centering prayer.
Well, I'll explain. I'll explain the method then.
Okay, great.
How it's done, and I'll just preface it by saying that the method itself comes from a 14th century, what seems to be a late 14th century treatise on called "The Cloud of Unknowing," and that goes back to that Mount Sinai thing that I mentioned before, and the fathers of the church who developed that theme in the context of prayer and contemplation. So you're kind of like under a cloud of unknowing. All your previous ways of knowing, your concepts, your images, are under a cloud, and you're unknowing. You're not knowing. You're going by a way of not knowing, because God is beyond knowing. So as John of the Cross says, to get to that which you cannot know, you must go by a way that you don't know, in which you don't know anything. So that the method comes from that treatise. So what we do is posture is important. It's kind of the physical basis for the prayer. So we try and be pretty much as I am here, 90-degree angle, sitting in your chair. These are not the best chairs for centering prayer because they're too comfortable.
Yeah.
So, but because you can't be slouching back and falling asleep. So the idea is to be alert, have the spine straight, your palms down on your thighs, so that you're sitting very straight, alert, but not tense in any way. All the muscles should be relaxed, and you can close your eyes. And what we do is and this is the method, specific method of centering prayer that goes back to the treatise, The Cloud of Unknowing. You choose what they call a sacred word. Now, it's a sacred word because you're using it in a sacred way. It could be love, peace, God, let go, even one or two syllables, Jesus, or truth. And whatever word helps to refocus on the silence and the depths of silence when your mind starts running away. Buddhists like to call it the monkey mind. As soon as you try to become silent, especially if you're not used to it, you discover your mind is going a mile a minute, racing, making plans, regrets, mulling over things, scheming, fretting. If you actually listen to your interior monologue for more than a minute, you probably go nuts in despair of your own sanity. Not you personally, but just in general. If one does that. So it's quite a struggle, especially in the beginning. But the idea is to get beyond all that, certainly all of that superficial stuff, but even holy thoughts, even holy symbol, holy images, all of the,
It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, it gets in the way, even the holy thoughts, God is good or God is love. The thinking, it gets in the way of the experiencing.
Right.
All right.
So
you go
we're going to
beyond that.
sit,
With a sacred word.
keep our eyes closed, and then we're going to have a sacred word. Is there
Now,
more
the
to-
sacred word is what you use to refocus yourself on the silence when your mind goes off. So, in other words,
and I can pick that word myself.
pick your word yourself. Don't change it during a specific session.
Okay.
You can change it the next time you do it.
Okay.
And the point is, you don't meditate. You don't think about the word itself. Love, God. You don't meditate on that. You simply use it as a tool.
Okay.
To refocus, as a way of expressing your intention to, as they say, to focus on, to be present to God's presence, to surrender to God's action within you, in pure faith, in silence. And so it's just a way of refocus. It's a tool for refocusing on that silence, and then you're just present. You're present to God's presence, and then whatever happens, happens, and may not seem like anything, but something is going on at a deeper level. And every time that happens, you go back to the word, and let it go. And as long as you can stay in that silence, present to God in faith, and then at the end, we just come back out of it. You can say,